Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
It's been so rich to meet with some of you, and eventually I'll meet with all of you, and I can't wait to hear about all the experiences of the Hsin Hsin Ming and also to the intensive, our natural resistance to this very odd way of being that we call Buddhist practice. And often for many of us, a simultaneous sort of delight and rest, especially when it's quiet, to have quiet and stillness and to have this quality of time. So it's both and. I so appreciated your talk, Sandra, and I want to continue forging ahead with Flint's translation. And I want to really, especially after talking to many of you and also myself, completing the translation for this third section. I haven't completed the whole thing. That there's, I don't want to hold up what we're calling Flint's translation as good, and the Hsin Hsin Ming that is in this ancient, more symbolic language bad. And I also want to keep encouraging you to have what you write be in your voice. Not in your version of Flint's voice, but in your voice. And a couple of you, in meeting with you, you just kind of spontaneously started, to my ears, speaking your Hsin Hsin Ming. And I was like, okay, write it like that. And so I wish that, sometimes I wish, I love the intimacy of meeting one-on-one a great deal, and cherish that time with each of you. And I love when at times Flint and Peg have experimented with having like a small group practice discussion so more people can hear. And so I kind of wish, other people had been around to hear someone, talking about their actual lives and then talking about the Hsin Hsin Ming, and then all of a sudden the two blend and they're in that person's voice. So that's what I'm inviting. I want to invite you guys to play with. So we were we had gotten through so many papers, through as vast as infinite space is perfect and lacks nothing, but because you select and reject, you can't perceive its true nature. And so on page 23 of the chant book, that's about halfway down. And so the part that Sandra explored and gave us lots of wonderful stories and imagery, and that wonderful Chinese phrase of, I want to say coming and going, but it wasn't that, it was the Wu Wei. Doing and not doing. So we're going to start at Don't Get Tangled in the World. And Joel, I'm curious if you're game for being my choral reader again. It's a little bit tricky, Flint's translation, but you did it so well last time. It was like you were doing the tango with the text. Are you willing?
Certainly, thank you.
Okay. So go from Don't Get Tangled in the World.
It will take me a minute to get set up, I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll just ramble as I do. We'll go through Don't Get Tangled in the World, through Returning to the Root at the bottom of page 23. And then we'll pick up Returning to the Root as the third section. So we'll just catch up on the second section that Sandra was inviting us to enter. And then we'll continue with the third section, and midway through the third section, do you know what happens? It stops.
It stops, right?
And so you guys will get to hear my first take at the rest. So we'll see how this goes, since our choral readers did not get to rehearse. Where did I say we were starting? Don't get tangled. Don't get tangled in the world. Don't lose yourself in emptiness.
Don't get tangled in the world of hate and otherness. Don't lose yourself in blind acceptance and lack of discernment.
Be at peace in the oneness of things, and all errors will disappear by themselves.
Challenge yourself to truly understand the oneness of things, and violent divisions will disappear by themselves.
If you don't live the Tao, you fall into assertion or denial.
If you can't tolerate being intimate with life as it is, even if it frightens you, you fall into a subtle and pervasive violence.
Asserting that the world is real, you are blind to its deeper reality.
Asserting that your limited perceptions are truth, you are blind to the precious, impermanent, living reality.
Denying that the world is... This text repeats itself so much. I'm like, am I repeating myself? Yes, I am, but I'm reading the right text. Denying that the world is real, you are blind to the selflessness of all things.
Turning away from the suffering all around you, you blind yourself to your tender reliance on all things.
The more you think about these matters, the farther you are from the truth.
The more you think about these matters with a fearful and contracted mind, the smaller your perspective becomes, and the more your heart contracts.
Step aside from all thinking, and there is nowhere you can't go.
Step aside from all attempts to protect yourself from the fear of impermanence and interdependence, and there is nowhere you can't go, and there will be no one you can exclude from your heart.
So that's the second section. And before we continue, I just want to check in about anything in this translation that's moving to you or you don't like. Something that jumps out as, whoa.
Just that last line, and again, Flint's expansion of it. I always have a little trouble with these kind of what I consider philosophical statements in the Hsin Hsin Ming. It's like, don't pay attention to this, and then you don't have to worry about that. You know, that it's kind of assertions, but what Flint turns it into personal relationship and ethics and humanity. You know, that last line. There's nowhere you can't go, and there will be no one you can exclude from your heart. That
one really, arrow. It made me think that recently I saw a wonderful movie. I encourage everyone I run into to see it, pretty much literally, called Sing Sing, and it's about a theater program in the Sing Sing prison in New York. Actually, I guess pretty close to Rosemary. And it's not a documentary, though it's based on a real program. And Coleman Domingo, the actor, the main actor, but most of the other actors are actually ex-convicts who served their time and were in the theater program. And at the beginning of the movie, you are just meeting these characters who are playing themselves, and they're all men, of course, and they're all covered with tattoos and scars. And some of them have very unusual hairdos, like completely shaved except for a blonde braid coming out of like the middle of their shaved head. Tattoos like on their face and neck, and then pretty dramatic scars. And the camera is very close to these men. And so at the beginning, they're walking by, they're doing a theater exercise. And I remember, this is the first time seeing them, just sort of like, in a movie, you tend to see beautiful people. And these were not yet in that moment beautiful to me. By the end of the movie, and actually realistically, probably about 10 minutes into the movie, they were all exquisitely beautiful to me. And so when I read this line, and there will be no one you can exclude from your heart, I thought of those men. On first take, total exclusion. Second take, thank goodness. I want to hang out with some of them. So anyone else before we forge ahead?
I have a little question about that, and that is, do you think you changed the meaning, or do you think this is a broader, this is really what it meant? There's no go. What's your feeling?
I don't have enough information about Chinese. I mean, honestly, to me, and there is nowhere you can't go, sounds like a Dr. Seuss book to me. It's so wildly optimistic that it's a feel-good throwaway line to me personally. And Flint's translation to me feels more like a challenge and also something I've experienced, not something I necessarily experience at first take, but something I have experienced and I want to continue experiencing. So good question, but
It is
no
largest
idea.
for me a way of reading it.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't think we have a way of knowing. I mean, we're just so culturally divorced from all of the causes and conditions that created this text. It's kind of just a miracle that we're finding anything useful to us at all in some ways, because we're from such a different world. One thing I wanted to point up is actually two things. One is, so much of the Hsin Hsin Ming is about, don't have preferences, don't set yourself apart, don't think too hard, blah, blah, blah. I want to really caution us that for some of us who had traumatic childhoods, which is, a lot of us, some people didn't get a chance to learn what their preferences were. I remember meeting with someone and I don't remember the specifics of the situation, and saying, well, what do you want? And this person said, I don't know. It wasn't I don't know right now, but I'll know in 5 minutes, but I have no idea. I hardly even understand what your question means. And so I can remember for myself in my 20s and 30s when I didn't know what my favorite kind of ice cream was. I didn't know where I wanted to eat. I didn't know what clothes I wanted to wear. I really did not have many preferences, but it wasn't, it was actually a developmental kind of arrest that I hadn't had a chance to develop those preferences. And so it's really key that we do get to know, we do have, preferences. We know what we want. We know who we want to elect to, run our country. We know what kind of, how we want to respond to climate crisis. We know what kind of people we want to have as friends. And we know what kind of ice cream we very much want. And if we can't, we also know that we can't eat dairy ice cream and we need to eat another kind of amazing frozen dessert. That's important. And so this saying don't have preferences is not that. It's not saying, oh, the war in Israel with Hamas, you should just sit back and let that play out. We should have preferences. And I read something recently, I think it was just yesterday morning in my Brown alumni magazine, about two scholars, one at Brown and one at some other university, one of whom is Palestinian and the other is Jewish. And they've been friends for a really long time and met at Brown, that's why it was in the alumni magazine. And they have written several books together, including, I guess sort of oddly, the most recent book is about women characters in Israeli movies. So they don't even just write like political books, they write about culture, things they're really interested in. And so they've, on the book tour for this book about Israeli women in film, during this, in the past year, they've been invited to speak at a whole bunch of places. And the interviewer was asking like, well, how does that go? How do you guys, how do you guys still get along? And they said two things. One, that they both had shared and also made an effort to learn about the other person's trauma, both their personal trauma and that of their ancestors. And two, that they were both pacifists. And they agreed on that. So this is kind of a digression, but it's really important. I think Buddhism sometimes gets challenged and also is, I know sometimes in my own practice, it just can be easier to think that, oh, the middle way is just let the chips fall where they may. And that's not really true. And that's not really what this is saying. So I want to caution us on that rail. So that was my little diversion. Are we ready to go on to the next section, which starts with returning to the root, or does anyone have anything they want to add to what Joel so ably read? Okay, we're going to keep going. So, Joel, are you ready for the next part? It starts returning to your own tender heart. But I have to read my part first. Okay. Returning to the root, you find the meaning.
Returning to your own tender heart, you restore the deepest meaning.
Chasing appearances, you lose their source.
Erecting the heart's armor, you lose what it means to truly be human.
At the moment of profound insight, you transcend both appearance and emptiness.
At the moment of profound insight and unsettling, you go beyond.
Hold on, Joel. I think it is at the moment of profound and unsettling insight.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I didn't see anything crossed out there. At a moment of profound and unsettling insight, you go beyond both being walled off against others and being foolishly passive.
Don't keep searching for the truth. Just let go of your opinions.
Don't keep searching for some seemingly absolute and ultimately partial truth. Just let go of your opinions. Listen deeply, respond carefully and wisely, remain curious and flexible, set boundaries when needed, and encourage kindness.
I feel like that last translation is Flint's Hail Mary of like, okay, I'm just going to throw everything else in. Everything else I didn't get to say yet. Any lines from either translation resonate or bring up resistance for you?
Shall I go?
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes back to the former part 2. I'm struggling with the way in which he seems to be describing emptiness, and also the world. So when you were talking about, caring about what's happening to people in a war, for example, that's the world. And I don't think that's necessarily hate and otherness. I think it can be compassion and justice. It could be standing, protecting a child. It could be nurturing, tending a garden. And then emptiness being blind acceptance and lack of discernment completely throws me. I thought emptiness was being connected to all being while experiencing the ephemerality of everything. I don't remember ever perceiving it as blind acceptance and lack of discernment. And then down here.
Wait, hold on just a sec. So hold on, Genevieve. We want to ride with you. We don't want to get left in the dust. So the first one that you brought up was it "Don't get tangled in the world"?
Yes.
Okay, and it was that Flint's translation says, "Don't get tangled in the world of hate and otherness." And so I think what Flint is doing is sort of like unpacking the, if you think of the middle way and you think of like, okay, here's the sweet spot, and then here's like, we're going off the ditch. And so I think the tangled in the world is one ditch. And that's why he's saying not just tangled in the world, but tangled in the world of hate and otherness. Like we know that world, we know how tangled up we can get in it. Our exercise that Sandra offered was that, was an example. Go to an example of you being tangled up in the world of hate and otherness. Now, hate might be a strong word for the situation that you described, but boiled down, it definitely is otherness. That's what causes that kind of conflict. And then the "don't lose yourself in emptiness." You're totally right that emptiness is, when we use it in, a Zen Buddhist sense, it is something, spacious and, for lack of too many words, good. But what I think he's doing is the whole sentence is "don't lose yourself in emptiness." And so it's that going off the ditch the other direction. It's like, here's the world, you can go get like sucked into Facebook, or here's the other side that you just get so blissed out that you don't give a flip about anything or anyone. So that's where he's saying the blind acceptance.
Yeah.
And we know those people, we've met those people that are like kind of airy fairy, and it's like they're so blissed out that the actual world doesn't seem to touch them.
It just doesn't feel right. I mean, my understanding is that the world and emptiness are both beautiful. They're both part of the human condition. And it's simply a matter of not getting stuck in one or the other.
Right.
But we need to go back and forth. And so I don't think that being in the world necessarily means hate. I understand that it's otherness because that's how we get things done. But I also think that emptiness is a state of true connection with all being. And that's not airy-fairy. That's,
Yeah.
a loving place to be.
Yeah. And I'm curious when when Darcy gave me Flint's translation, I immediately thought of you, and I thought, oh, I can't even use the word translation. I mean, a translator is going to be like deeply offended. As you should be, because this is not really a translation, but I don't know what
interpretation.
An interpretation. Okay, that's the right word. I should have just consulted with you. So this is one person's interpretation, and it has the limited perspective and biases of that individual, as will my translation and yours and yours and yours and yours. And one thing that we talked about when we met is that this Flint's translation really, I think one thing that was missing in it for me, that I haven't inserted it yet, I haven't had time, is it seems to express that the limitation that we as humans tend to have that brings us pain and disconnectedness is really just a fairly simple choice. You know, be open, be friendly, be kind, be trusting, connect with people, and like drop your guard and drop your armor. And I don't disagree with that, but for people who have experienced trauma, for people that are here because of that armored heart, they survived a lot of stuff because of that armored heart. It's not as simple as just deciding, stop doing that. Be open. And so, of course, that's what our practice is about, is learning how to slowly gain that trust and sense of safety in the world. So yeah, this is not perfect, but it is an interpretation. I want to be mindful of time, so we have some time to write or share.
Can Serenity just say
Oh
what
yes, Serenity, yes, I'm so sorry, yes.
I'm often caught by the don't keep searching for the truth. And then Flint's interpretation of, for some seemingly absolute, but ultimately partial truth. You know, and I think at some point in my life, I was much like Fox Mulder, who said, you know, the truth is out there. You have to keep searching for it. But I think I would temper it with a truth is out there, and maybe one that I haven't seen before, you know, which might be a way of stepping outside of the conditions of, you know, trauma and protecting that tender heart, and opening to a way of seeing another truth, because maybe there isn't just one, or I'm pretty sure there isn't just one. There's one for every person and perspective.
Thank you, Serenity. I really, I'm so grateful to have people come forward with, I encourage people to fall in love with whichever text that they want to, or anything they want to fall in love with, as long as it's wholesome. But it's really interesting when people bring their own perspective and their own life experience to something that we're studying, and then we get a window into other possibilities, and that excites me and makes me grateful that all of us are here. Joel, I want to continue our reading, but we're going to switch parts because I made an attempt at an ending. It is, I'm going to call it a straw woman. You can burn her down. So we're at for the mind in harmony with the Tao. Is that right? Okay. So do you mind reading the Hsin Hsin Ming line, and then I'll read my interpretation?
Yes, I mean, I do not mind. All right, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
For the mind in harmony with the Tao, all selfishness disappears.
For when your heart is open and curious and welcomes life as it is, all sense of separateness, isolation, and brokenness disappears.
With not even a trace of self-doubt, you can trust the universe completely.
Without holding back, life flows in to meet you completely.
All at once you are free with nothing left to hold on to.
Can you finish the next two lines?
Oh, okay. All at once you are free with nothing left to hold on to. All is empty, brilliant, perfect in its own being.
Suddenly, your body feels at ease, the limiting stories fall away, you don't need to be in control, and you are free, unbound, connected, whole. So I'll read that again if you're interested. I'm sort of happy with it, but for when your heart is open and curious and welcomes life as it is, all sense of separateness, isolation, and brokenness disappear. Without holding back, life flows in to meet you completely. Suddenly your body feels at ease, the limiting stories fall away, you don't need to be in control, and you are free, unbound, connected, and whole. So we have about 40 minutes, and what I'd like to do is I guess I want to show of hands first. It can be your real hand since we all have those. How lucky we are. We all have two real hands. You just can't take anything for granted, right, Bridget? So with your real hand, raise your real hand if you have some writing that you would be willing to share with one other person. And it's okay, we've been really busy. You may be like, writing, when the hell was I supposed to write? I ate lunch. I just want to check in. If people don't have any writing, then we will write. So anyone have writing that they have ready to potentially share? Okay, a few people. We need to write. Okay, you guys hold your horses. And so let's go ahead and write for 15 minutes and then back together as a whole group. And just 15 minutes sound right? That's how long we had last night. Do you want a little bit more time? 20. Rosemary's like 20. Lynn's like, no way, 15. Do you guys have a sense of time?
20.
20? Okay, 20. 20 it is. So we'll see you back here.
And what are we gonna be writing?
What are you gonna be writing? Good question. Ideally, you're going to be writing your translation of the Hsin Hsin Ming. So whether that's writing down Flint's text in a way that is easier to look at and then editing the hell out of it, or just starting on your own, either from the translation or from Flint's interpretation. We'll be writing our interpretation. I'm so glad I have this word now. And also, I wanted to make sure, I apologize that I didn't mention this yesterday. I want to be inclusive of all brains. And so some brains don't like writing. Writing is not how they communicate. Those brains might want to draw. Some people might actually, since we're doing an interpretation, want to do an interpretive dance. But I don't know that that is going to fit with our Zen Buddhist practice, which tends to be a bit more still. Also, many of us are fortunate to have other languages that were our first tongue, our mother tongue. And so if there's a language that this feels right for you to write in that happens not to be English, great. Write in that language. Write in the right language for your brain and your tongue. Yeah, and Yeah, I think that's it. Just knowing that I'm a writer, so I assume everyone loves to write. But that I realize is a very limiting view, and I want you to communicate how you communicate best to yourself. Yeah, Jeanette.
I wasn't here last night, so are we writing any part of the Hsin Hsin Ming right now? I mean, interpreting any part? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to me to start at the beginning. But yeah, you can jump in at whatever section you want.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, enough questions and chit chat. Go write, and we will come back to be together at 5, 10, 15, 20, at 20 minutes till the hour. So I know we're not a small group of 2 people. That was an airplane. We're a little bit bigger than a group of 2 people, but time-wise, I felt like if we broke into small groups, then we wouldn't get to hear with a larger group. So I'm hoping that at least a few of us will feel, tomorrow we'll have some small group time, but hoping that someone will feel comfortable sharing a little bit of what they wrote or a little of their experience of what they wrote or anything else having to do with our time together so far. And I'm gonna hold, since we've heard from Genevieve recently, I wanna check with the room because we haven't heard from you guys lately. These people have these big hands that they can hold up in the corner of their box, and you guys just have your little hands. So I wanna just check in.
Well, I could read mine.
All right. Do you wanna wait till the teapot finishes?
Actually, I'm the one that plugged it in.
That's okay,
Don't
that's
need
fine.
to read. So I haven't read this over, and I don't know if it's exactly what I want to say, but it felt as I was writing it like it was. So, yeah, I was kind of looking both at the Hsin Hsin Ming and
Can you all hear Darcy well? Okay, great.
And I was looking at Clint's interpretation and then just sort of trying to feel what was mine, you know. I think what I'd like to do is, so it makes more sense to me, is read the actual Hsin Hsin Ming and then what I wrote.
The Great Way isn't difficult for those who are unattached to their preferences.
Living wholeheartedly isn't difficult when we release our fears and embrace not knowing.
Let go of longing and aversion, and everything will be perfectly clear.
Let go of demands and expectations, and you will be clear and able to move freely.
When you cling to a hair's breadth of distinction, heaven and earth are set apart.
When you cling to your illusion of certainty, you become divided against yourself and everyone else.
If you want to realize the truth, don't be for or against.
If you want peace of body, mind, soften your grip on fear and certainty, befriend vulnerability and not knowing.
The struggle between good and evil is the primal disease of the mind. Not grasping the deeper meaning, you just trouble your mind's serenity.
Living life as a struggle between good and evil is the primal disease of the mind body. Not being willing to open to your profound interconnectedness with everyone and everything, you forfeit ease of body and mind.
As vast as infinite space, it is perfect and lacks nothing. But because you select and reject, you can't perceive its true nature.
As vast as infinite, I kind of ran out of time here. As vast as infinite space, your natural heart mind is perfect and lacks nothing. That's also what Flint wrote, yeah. Anyway, I'll just finish with, but because you, and I don't know what I want to say with the rest of it yet, but yeah. Because you select and reject or contract in fear due to your conditioning, it doesn't quite feel right. You can't perceive its true nature. Sure. Anyway, it was really, it felt very personal, you know, and it felt more meaningful. And, you know, I kind of was thinking about how I had given this to you. And I don't know if Flint knows we're using it like this. He might be appalled. Because I do remember the main thing he emphasized was that you rewrite it to make it your own. And I think it was just an example.
Right.
And rewriting it this way, yeah, it makes these sort of old poems, songs, scriptures come alive, you know. For me, old stuff a lot of times doesn't quite.
Could you read the first few lines again? Just the beginning? Yeah.
Yeah. Living wholeheartedly isn't difficult when we release our fears and embrace not knowing. Let go of demands and expectations and you will be clear and able to move freely.
It's not enough for me, but I want other people to read. I just feel so lucky that you're writing this, and I'm glad you have more time tomorrow. Because I want to hear it. It sounds so much like you, and it almost brought me to tears. It's like the information I wish I had gotten when I was, I don't know, very young. Chanel.
Thank you, Darcy. Initially, I raised my hand to just suggest that we go around and each read the next line in our own words. And it was just a thought to include everyone. But if you wish, I could read. I don't want to take more time than we have.
We have a healthy 10 minutes.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I'd like to hear from you, and then we'll do Rosemary and Becky and anyone else in this room. We'll see where we are at the time.
Thank you. Thank you for this offering. Okay. The path of compassion and one being isn't difficult for those who allow circumstances and people to be just as they are. Relinquishing cravings and judgments opens us to being fully present in our aliveness. Grasping the slightest desire, aversion, or distinction divides joy from pain, so that our experience is determined by circumstances. If you wish to meet life as it is in each moment, abandon preferences, debate, and allegiances. The belief that beings and experiences are good or bad and separate causes us suffering. The oneness of all being is liberating, serene, infinite, and complete. When you divide being into pieces and assess them, you lose that liberating serenity, fullness of heart, and belonging in the universe. Move in the world without grasping or holding. Embody universal love without turning away from compassionate action. That's as far as I got. I'm glad I got to that piece that I was struggling with earlier. Thank you.
And what I'm loving is that theoretically, we're all starting with the same text and at least some overlapping of interpretation of that text or understanding as much as language allows. And yet, what we're writing sounds, I mean, what we've heard so far sounds like each of you. And I guess that means mine sound like me, I don't know. But we'll keep experimenting with this hypothesis. It's what I was hoping, so yay. Thank you, Jennifer.
Can I go? Good? Okay, could someone read Flint's first line for me, please? Somebody volunteer?
Love and acceptance isn't difficult for those who are unafraid.
Welcoming fear. And acknowledging that emotion and awareness are not separate. And further, that emotion and awareness are not other. Opens the door of the heart to our basic humanity and to deep self-acceptance and love, which is the doorway to loving the world.
Thank you, Rosemary.
So I didn't have, I couldn't have Flint's in front of me because I wasn't able to print it out. But anyway, I just wrote something and that felt good because I've been kind of stuck not to so far this intensive. So the great way is difficult. We walk it together. Preferences like suffering will always be with us. See them, hear them, love them, and hold them lightly. Letting go of yearning and turning toward what is helps me glimpse clarity and the freedoms offered. Letting go of comparisons, judgmentalism, and opposed perspectives. Imagining perspectives beyond my current one helps me to not be attached. Listening helps me see many perspectives beyond those I can imagine, and grows my compassion for myself and others. That's about all I got, all the farther I got, but it's got a lot more to it.
Thank you, Becky. Would it help if I took a photograph so it was a photo? Would you be able to see it, or are you just stuck on your phone so you can only see one thing at a time?
I can only see one thing at a time. Thank you, girl.
Switching back to the Zendo, would anyone else like to read? Or show their drawings? Or perform their interpretive dance?
I'd like to share something.
Okay, or share something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to read, but I've had this idea for about a month now that we all have exactly what we need to become enlightened. And this is really evidence the way we all get this. And yet I'm really curious about, so then how do we internalize it and become it? That's just kind of my question.
I think that's exactly what the Buddha has set forth for us. I mean, we've got the instructions. And I think, as Sandra pointed out earlier, and that I've seen for myself and I've seen in many of my spiritual friends, that the practice, yeah, we may not get there 24/7, but we get there a lot more often and we get there quicker to own our stories, to connect, to be open-hearted, to forgive, to meet conflict, all the things.
Quicker than we used to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think the prescription, if you will, is, what we're doing.
I'll read a little.
Oh, good.
Life is easy unless you make it hard. Give up desire and anger and the sun will shine. When you split hairs, this and that are opposed. If you want to know what's up, don't vote. Judging right and wrong is mental illness. Not going beyond, you are just a bundle of nerves. The way is so big that it contains all, but because you are so picky, you are not invited to the picnic. Don't get woven into a tapestry. Don't sit on a passing cloud. Be cool that there is no other and there are no mistakes. If you don't live as one with nature, you plunge into saying yay and nay. Saying that things don't exist, you don't appreciate pure love. Thinking doesn't lead to understanding and makes you blind to the cosmos. Stop pondering and you can fly with the clouds. Returning to who you are, you see the light. Getting caught in how things look, you don't see their beauty. When you understand this, you go beyond what seems and what is. Stop investigating and just forget. When you are one with the trees, giving and taking are one and the same, and with complete clarity. You can have faith in things as they are.
A lot of the imagery actually I could see as drawings that you made. Sandra, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. I really is very, I'm not a writer per se, but just to see the flavor of each person. And I would just ask you to add, when you are reading that, your own version of the Hsin Hsin Ming, just see how they resonate in your body. What happens in your body when you're saying anything? What grabs your body more? Any sentence that grabs, just be with that. The Hsin Hsin Ming or the one that you wrote, just be with that and just let it work through you. So that would be only some recommendation if you want to do it.
Thank you. It is almost 3 o'clock. Let's take a moment to put things back together, and we will then be walking